Mother Earth Medicine.
An Ancestral Intelligence podcast to heal our future.
Halito, y'all. Welcome to Mother Earth Medicine, an Ancestral Intelligence podcast to heal our future. Thank you so much for joining us for this first episode. My name is Aimee Roberson. I'm the Executive Director of Cultural Survival, and I'm an enrolled member of the Chahta Nation of Oklahoma and also of Chikashsha and mixed European descent. I am a lifelong student of Mother Earth's wisdom, and I hold degrees in geology and conservation biology. I'm committed to reciprocity and community care, and I work with people to ensure that the social ecological systems upon which we all depend continue to flourish. Throughout my career, I've worked in the fields of conservation biology, ecosystem restoration, and climate adaptation, and I have guided collaborative efforts focused on environmental stewardship, co-creating collective vision, integrating cultural values and ecological knowledge with science for meaningful decision-making, and implementing shared strategies in caring for each other, our more than human relatives, and Mother Earth. I joined Cultural Survival in July of 2024 to be able to work in a way that fully centers Indigenous peoples, the original caretakers of Mother Earth. And it's my great pleasure today to be here with Lyla June Johnston. Lyla is a relatively new member of the board of Cultural Survival, and we're joining forces here to bring you this podcast. Dr. Lyla June Johnston, also known as Lyla June, is an Indigenous musician, scholar, and community organizer of the Diné, also known as Navajo, and Tsétsêhéstâhese, Cheyenne, and European lineages. Her messages focus on Indigenous rights, supporting youth, traditional land stewardship practices, and healing intergenerational and intercultural trauma. Lyla blends her study of human ecology at Stanford, graduate work in Indigenous pedagogy, and the traditional worldview she grew up with to inform her music, perspectives, and solutions. Her doctoral research focused on the ways in which pre-colonial Indigenous nations shaped large regions of Turtle Island, also known as the Americas, to produce abundant food systems for humans and non-humans. Lyla, it's so great to be partnering with you in this way. Really excited to co-host this podcast together. And I'm wondering if we could start out, if there's anything else you want to share about yourself, and also if you could share why you've joined the Board of Cultural Survival and what you're looking forward to with this podcast collaboration.
Sure. Greetings, my relatives and my people. I'm from the Tsétsêhéstâhese clan of the Diné Nation. We are also incorrectly known as Navajo, but we call ourselves Diné. And I get that clan from my mother. We get our last names from our mothers. So that Tsétsêhéstâhese is a matrilineal thing passed on through the mothers. My father's mother's clan, my second clan, is the Tsétsêhéstâhese or Southern Cheyenne Nation. My mother's father is the Salt clan of the Diné, Tsétsêhéstâhese is what we call it. And my father's father, my last clan, my patrilineal, is a Scottish clan, among other things that I don't know fully about, but I do know those things, that there's Scottish in that lineage. So to answer your question, Aimee, I joined the board of Cultural Survival simply because people asked me to, and I wanted to be of service. And I think just like anything I do, it's just sort of a wild hope, a wild leap of faith that maybe it can make a difference for future generations. And I've always admired cultural survival since I was very young. When I was going to Stanford as a young, I think I was like 19 in my human ecology class, I heard about cultural survival and I was really impressed by what they stood for. And I had no idea, almost 2 decades later, I'd be joining the board, and I'm really proud of that, to be of service. There's quite a few board members. I love how kind of massive this organization is. It's international. So I'm one of many beautiful board members. And as for this collaboration of Tsétsêhéstâhese, podcast, sort of morphing into Mother Earth Medicine so that you and I can co-host it together, I'm really looking forward to bringing the wealth of connections that I have together with the wealth of connections that you have as the executive director of Cultural Survival. And I think everything's better when we do it together. And so I'm really grateful that you and I are, embodying sisterhood and embodying unity and embodying alliances. I really do believe what my elders told me, which is that the ancestors were never confrontational and they would never go anywhere alone. And I loved that little quote that my elders told me, that they never went anywhere alone. And so I was alone hosting Tsétsêhéstâhese podcast for a long time. And I think it's much better that Tsétsêhéstâhese is now morphing into Mother Earth Medicine we're just gonna be interviewing some of the coolest people in the world, and it's gonna be a really wonderful journey with you. So thank you for having me on.
Yeah, absolutely, Lyla. We're so grateful that you've joined the board and really excited about this collaborative podcast. So Lyla, I'm wondering if you could tell us a bit more about your background and your work with Indigenous peoples, as well as your interest and work in human ecology overall.
Sure. So I grew up in Taos, New Mexico, which is a little tiny town in northern New Mexico, which is a part of the United States. It's not Mexico, contrary to popular belief. Anyways, it's all imaginary colonial borders anyways, right? But so it's in the north of what we now call New Mexico, on the border of Colorado. And there's a lot of interesting melange of like indigenous nations there, anchored by the Tiwa Pueblo people, who I am indebted to so much for so many reasons. And so I was a Diné woman growing up in Tiwa lands. And my mother, was my mother's parents were survivors of the residential school system, the federal Indian boarding school system. So they were really removed from their culture because they were literally punished for speaking their culture. My grandma says that in the boarding school, if anyone was caught speaking Diné, our native tongue, they would have to write 100 times, "I will only speak English, I will only speak English, I will only speak English." My grandmother died at 100. She died a couple years ago, and she told me many stories about the boarding schools that she survived. And so I grew up kind of, on one hand, disconnected because that lineage was broken by the boarding schools. And on the other hand, very connected because I got to live with Tiwa people and see kind of the cultural ways that they embody, the ways that they respect Mother Earth, that they respect their language and their traditions. And of course, they're very careful about who they share that with. So I didn't get fully into it, because they're very, protective of their culture as they should be, given everything they've been through. And then I would also go to sweat lodges and sun dances and vision quests with Lakota Nation, which there was a strong, sweat lodge community in Taos. So I grew up learning the Lakota songs and going to sweat lodge since I was like 5 years old. And I would go to South Dakota every summer to Sundance with my family. And so I think the Lakota people I'm also very indebted to, because they really saved my life a lot through their ceremonies. And I did have my womanhood ceremony when I was 14 in Diné, my people's land. Beautiful 4-day ceremony, really important part of my life. But I didn't really start learning Nehizad, our language and our ways of life. I didn't really start learning all of that until I was in my late teens and early 20s, when I said, you know what, I'm sick of not knowing the details of my people's language, of my people's cosmology, of our worldview. And I was very fortunate to have many elders to this day teaching me about Diné and Dinétra and how our four sacred mountains cradle us and how we perceive the sacred of Mother Earth. We call it Neheman Nahastsan, which literally means our mother, the earth. And so it makes sense that I'm with you on this Mother Earth Medicine podcast, because that's very much what my mother's lineage is all about. And with human ecology, I studied, that at Stanford. Technically, I studied anthropology with an environmental focus, but, I call it human ecology because that's a little bit more accurate of what I was digging into, the readings and the things I was writing about. I could talk way too long about all that nerdy stuff, and I will spare all of you. But suffice it to say that I have done a lot of research in Indigenous land management, sacred sites, and really tried my hardest to turn the academy, the college, my master's degree, my PhD. I tried to turn it all into an opportunity to learn more about our people. Because I had no interest really in the Eurocentric curriculum. I wanted to learn about us. So I kind of turned university into a window that I could learn more about us and get a degree at the same time. And I really liked that. So yeah, there's a lot more I could say about that. But my PhD work is really just about pre-colonial food systems and how our nations really created vast gardens, and that debunking the myth of the hunter-gatherer. We were never hunter-gatherers, because hunter-gatherers are people who are victims of circumstance looking for a berry to eat or a deer to hunt. We were gardening the whole earth in systematic ways, cultivating entire ecosystems, designing ecosystems such that they would reproduce reliable, predictable food, period, for us season after season after season after season. And we honed a science after trial and error, and even our own collapse of our own civilizations, to learn how to be gentle with the earth and how to be responsible to her. So my research is really about food systems, land management, and really honoring the deep heritage of our nations, and debunking this myth of like the primitive Indian, and saying, no. We were, and in many places still are, really gardening entire landscapes in really advanced ways.
That's so beautiful, Lyla. And I love what you shared and how you said this. I've been following your work for some time and just really excited to dig into these topics with you and others in the podcast. I can't help think about this theme of like connection and reconnection. My own journey has been similar in some ways to what you've shared. My people, my Chahta and Chikashsha ancestors were removed from our homelands in the 1830s during the Trail of Tears and Death, which is what one of our chiefs called it, to what is now Indian Territory, or Oklahoma, which in the Chahta language means red people. But my family was in Oklahoma for many generations, and then moved to Minnesota when I was a child. And my mother, who was a family therapist, luckily was very active in the Native American community in the Twin Cities and Minneapolis especially. And so she had lots of friends from other Indigenous nations, Lakota and Anishinaabe peoples. And I always felt very fortunate to know them, to be able to go to sweats, to different ceremonies, even powwows, to be exposed to Native cultures and that connection to the land and to Mother Earth. And I think that's, what this whole podcast is about, right? Is how are we connected, or how can we reconnect to Mother Earth and to the cultures that we all have somewhere in our background. No matter how far removed we are from them, every human being has Indigenous roots somewhere back in their lineage and somewhere on Mother Earth. And so I'm really glad that you brought that up, and I think we're going to be talking a lot more about it. Now, thinking about this, I'm really curious. I've seen that you're involved in something called the Rehuman Project, or Rehuman School. is something that you're contributing to. And I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit more about that. What is that about, and who is it for? What is your role there?
Well, the Rehuman School, which can be found at rehuman.earth, it's quite a glorious website we've crafted to hold these online classes, and the community we've built is kind of crazy. I founded it, I co-created it with my dear friends Hallie San Clemente Morrison and Lisa Caton, also known as Lisa Love. And we wanted to create an online school where we could help people learn Indigenous knowledge, both Indigenous peoples and non-Indigenous peoples, or, people in diaspora, I guess you could say. And we've already enrolled over 3,000 students. We've taught 8 classes. And even though the classes are free, we've generated tens of thousands of dollars of revenue through donations that people give to take the classes. And we forward all the proceeds of our revenue to biocultural restoration projects. So we've been honored to send $22,000 to Bison Rematriation Project in Kentucky, the Appalachian Rekindling Project, led by mostly Tsalagi, Cherokee people, bringing bison back to Kentucky, which is super exciting. Not to Kentucky, back to Kentucky, because they were always there before they were extinguished in that area. And that's the thing a lot of people don't know. Bison were all up and down from Pennsylvania to even as far south as Louisiana, all the way to New Mexico, northern Mexico, Texas, way up into Canada. So we were able to contribute to that effort. We donated $10,000 to the Mabengokre Indigenous Nation in Brazil that I was just visiting. And so it's kind of cool how we're like creating this school where we teach, hundreds of people at a time, everything from Indigenous food systems to Indigenous perspectives on AI to how to be in solidarity with Indigenous communities. We had like a cultural competency training, like how do you approach Indigenous communities the right way? That was probably the most satisfying class, right? Because we're teaching all these people who want to form alliances with Native people how to come correct and how to like really not make the faux pas and the common errors that non-Native people make when they come into our communities. And that was really fun, and we created a really strong community. So yeah, that's sort of the dream. And we have Dr. Kahete, who wrote the book Native Science and Look to the Mountain. And we're having a lot of Rowan White coming on as a seed keeper to teach about seeds. And so we're kind of creating like a hub where Indigenous peoples can teach their knowledge and get paid a decent amount to teach, but also generate an overflow of profit, which is all donation-based sliding scale. It's nobody's turned away for lack of funds that can go and reinvested into our Mother Earth in some form. So it's kind of a win-win-win-win-win-win situation. And that's the kind of things I like to do, is things that are accomplishing many, many things at once.
Absolutely. That's amazing, Lyla. I didn't realize how accessible it is, that it's by donation. And it sounds like the model you're creating the Rehuman School around is like really well grounded in the value of reciprocity, right? That you're giving opportunities to learn and to teach, you're receiving donations, you're also paying that forward and helping out other Indigenous-led efforts. I love what you shared about returning bison to Kentucky. So we, a lot of people don't know that bison were once in the Southeast. I know that because, trained as an ecologist, but mainly because as I've reconnected to my own Chahta and Chikashsha roots and started learning the language, we have a word, we have a name for bison, which is Yanish. And we have stories about them in our homelands in the Southeast, and which included, on the Chickasaw side, would include Kentucky and Tennessee, and Chahta, further south and east into Louisiana. Yeah. Thank you for sharing about that.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing that word.
Yeah, Yanish. I love that word. Lyla, are there other projects you're working on that you'd like to share about today?
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of just a crazy lady who, sometimes people ask me like, what do you do? And I'm like, I'm just a crazy lady who's obsessed with the creator and wants to serve the creator in everything that I do. And I find the creator to be so beautiful and so magical and so nourishing. And I find, and I don't know what creator is. It's just, to me, it's like a presence or a force or a feeling that is just so loving and so kind and so desperately wants to reach its children here. And in Diné, we say Mother Earth and Father Sky, that these two things together birth all life. And therefore we are all relatives because we share the same mother, Mother Earth, and the same father, Father Sky, who brings the rain and the sun and the water that nourishes the soil and impregnates the earth with life. And so we're all relatives in that sense. And so to me, as a Diné person, I don't think we really have careers or projects or like, I mean, okay, I'm speaking maybe hypothetically because I wasn't there when my ancestors were there. But I think that we were more about like, how do you be a responsible neighbor and relative to life? And how do you honor that force which flows through all of us? And to me, the way I honor that is by trying to listen to what Creator wants me to do and trying to have joy, because I think joy is what Creator ultimately wants us to feel here, and to really allow myself to relish in the absolute splendor of this life, and to really be a part of the joy that's all around, and to bring joy to people through love, laughter, being silly. But how that happens is like, yeah, I have a lot of projects, you know, like, or I give a lot of speeches, I write a lot of music, I have crazy visions. We're having the International Indigenous Women's Congress next year. We're creating solidarity learning journeys where we invite people to Diné, to my people's homeland, and show them the boarding schools, show them the concentration camps where we too were put on a death march called the Long Walk, and show people the real truth of the history. People from Europe, wealth holders, policymakers, you know, bringing them to our communities and doing quote unquote tourism, but doing it on our terms. No more singing and dancing for the white gaze. You know, we're sick of that. We're done. And the white gaze doesn't want it either. They want something authentic and real. And so we're launching like a quote unquote tourism company, but it's more of like a learning journey than a tour. And also not just the doom and gloom of the history of indigenous nations, of attempted genocide, but also doing horseback riding in Monument Valley, sleeping in a hogan under the starlight, you know, like really seeing the beauty of our people too, even in the face of everything we've been through, and forming those alliances. And we're also trying to, you know, work with veterans, military veterans, who are really usually quite interested in supporting indigenous peoples and vice versa. So yeah, we have a lot of irons in the fire. I say we because, again, I never work alone. I try not to anyways. I have a big team, and now I'm part of Cultural Survival, which is just such a blessing. And getting to hang out with you in New York next week, or in a couple weeks, at the Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. I'm just so happy to have CS be one of my irons in the fire that I can try to contribute to. So I guess that's a roundabout way of saying, like, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm just trying to be of service. I think ultimately at the core of it is like, I get happy out of being of service and being a servant of life.
You're listening to Mother Earth Medicine,
an ancestral intelligence podcast to heal our future.
This podcast is brought to you by Cultural Survival. We are an Indigenous-led organization that has been supporting Indigenous peoples in their self-determination, defense of their rights and territories, and continuance and revitalization of their lifeways, cultures, and languages for more than 50 years.
We invite you to visit our website, www.cs.org, and make a donation. Every donation counts, no matter the size. Your donation will go a long way to ensure that Indigenous voices across the planet are heard and actions are taken to protect their rights and territories, along with the future of Mother Earth.
Thank you for contributing to our work with Indigenous peoples around the globe. It's an investment in a flourishing future for all. That's beautiful, Lyla. And your passion for serving Creator and your dedication to Mother Earth are also very inspiring and I think probably contagious as well, which really bodes well for the future of humanity. I'm so excited to have this platform, to be sharing it with you, and to be in dialogue with other Indigenous leaders and peoples around the world. I think there's a lot to be shared with humanity at this time that people really need to hear. We also talk about the Creator, and I feel that you and I are really aligned in that way, that's what guides me as well. Our word is Ababanili, which is the one who sits above. And we talk of Mother Earth, Holitopa Ishki, beloved Mother, and Father Son is Hashtali. So I think there's all Indigenous cultures, there's extreme diversity, right, around the world where Indigenous peoples have coexisted in a certain place, in a particular place within specific ecosystems, and created and nurtured cultures and lifeways that are in right relationship with Mother Earth, that take into account the need, the responsibility to care for each other as humans, but also for our more than human relatives, for the waters and the lands that we all share and the ecosystems we depend on. And these are the things that I think humanity needs to hear more about, that some of us have been disconnected or are reconnecting to these ways. And this is really what I want to talk to the world about, you know? Speaking of which, you know, I always find it so inspiring to visit Indigenous communities or to visit with people from other Indigenous communities, to have that kinship across our various nations and cultures. And I know you just returned from visiting with some communities in Brazil, and I was wondering if there's anything you want to share about that.
Yeah, I had the honor to visit the Mabengokre Nation, also known as Kayapo, but that's not their actual name, as usual. Their name for themselves is Mabengokre. And I went on 2 planes deep into the rainforest, little tiny planes, like 4-seater planes. And the second, plane into the rainforest landed on like a dirt landing strip. We were way out there. Beautiful community. Oh gosh, to this day, I'm just like, they gave me a name. They adopted me, the whole 9 yards. They painted me with their charcoal, temporary tattoo kind of charcoal fruit juice paint. They're really good at kind of roping you into their struggle, you're Mabengokre now. And it's like, okay, I guess I'm with you now, in a lifelong struggle to support this nation. They do a lot of the Amazonian dark earths where they manage the soil system across the entire Amazon River basin or at least their neighborhood of it. It's amazing to think the amount of stuff they do to protect the soil and therefore all life in the Amazon, and that the vast majority of the soil structure in the tributaries and the Amazon are actually man-made. So I got to nerd out on that, which is sort of my PhD topic and my passion. But most of all, we just asked them, what do you guys want? Obviously I'd love to study your soil all day long, but what do you guys want? What do you need? And they said, well, we want to fund 4 of our youth to go out and film the elders before they die. And I was like, damn, darn, dang, that's amazing. Like, okay, here we go. And they only need like $38,000 to fund the entire project, which is like 4 youth, a supervisor, camera equipment, paying the elders, everything. So we're like, okay, let's do it. So we got some funding rolling, and it was really fun, really powerful, and had a good time. But it's really connected to Mother Earth Medicine podcast, that what we're doing with this podcast, I think, is we're trying to highlight the dreams of Indigenous peoples, the solutions, the desires, just like this community's desire. And I'm so honored to be now the co-host of Mother Earth Medicine with you. And I love how you've been kind of interviewing me, but I want to now, it's like we're interviewing each other. We're co-hosting each other. So now I want to kind of turn it back to you and say, just like these Mapengokre people, really inspire me to be closer to my language and my roots the way that they are. What inspires you to so deeply want to launch Mother Earth Medicine podcast? I mean, I've seen you for the past few weeks, just really excited. And, we're building the logo for the podcast. You got all your new equipment. I've just been really seeing you overjoyed about this podcast, and it makes me so happy that we can nerd out together on it as people who are really into this medium of communication. So yeah, like, what was it that inspired you to launch Mother Earth Medicine?
Yeah, thanks for asking. I am really excited about this. Absolutely. And for me, it's been a journey. I feel like my whole life's journey has brought me to this point of launching this podcast. My work at Cultural Survival, of course, where we are often involved in projects like the one you're talking about, where we're helping youth in their community to facilitate that intergenerational transference of ancestral intelligence, of traditional ecological knowledge, of culture and life ways. So it's so beautiful to hear about the project you're working on as well. As I mentioned, my people were removed from our homelands and have reservations in what's now the state of Oklahoma. And then my family removed themselves from Oklahoma when I was young, but I was able to be in relationship with Indigenous peoples, with Native peoples in Minnesota, and I'm so grateful for that, because I think it kept that spark alive in me of being connected to the earth, and then wanting to really reconnect to my own roots, to my own cultures, with the Chahta and Chikashsha peoples. And also to follow, Western education along these lines too. And so after studying and working in the fields of biodiversity conservation, ecological restoration, and climate adaptation for many years, a few things became just really crystal clear about the polycrises that we are facing on this planet, on Mother Earth, including climate change, ecocide, biodiversity collapse, and inequity and injustice that so many people are facing around the world. The first thing is that they are all interrelated, that these sort of extractive ideologies that are in power around the world right now, that are being empowered by empires and sometimes authoritarian regimes, are leading to all these things. They all have a similar source, this kind of malignant narcissism where people are only looking out for themselves, putting profit over people. And it's so destructive to Mother Earth, to our communities, to ourselves as individuals even. And so knowing that all these things are related and understanding what it means to be Indigenous, to come from an Indigenous culture that really is in right relationship with Mother Earth, or was at some point within our cultural memory, on the homelands our ancestors occupied. I realized that if we want to truly address these polycrises, we need to center, listen to, and support Indigenous peoples who are continuing to live sustainably, who are continuing to live regenerative lifeways that are based on ancestral intelligence, based on traditional knowledge systems and values that have been transmitted through many, many generations to this present moment. We know that something like 80% of the world's biodiversity is stewarded, is cared for Indigenous peoples on their homelands. And that at the same time, the challenges to Indigenous peoples in protecting those homelands and protecting the waters, the more than human relatives that share ecosystems with us, is super challenging because of extractivism. One of the issues we work on at Cultural Survival is we work with the SURGE Coalition, which stands for Securing Indigenous Rights in the Green Economy. And one of the statistics I've learned since coming to Cultural Survival and working with the SURGE Coalition is that even in wanting to transition to a greener economy, to transition away from a fossil fuel-based energy, there's a lot of things to consider, and still Indigenous peoples are being oppressed through this process. We know that something like 53% of transitional mineral deposits that are needed for things like lithium batteries, for solar energy, for quote unquote green energy. These mines, these deposits that are being targeted for mining, 53% of them are on or adjacent to Indigenous peoples' land. And so the pressures on Indigenous peoples continue. So while they hold the keys to a more healthy, flourishing, healed future for all of humanity and all of life on Earth, they also continue to be on the front lines, having to defend and protect their communities and their homelands and their cultures. So it's really important that we come together in solidarity to protect and defend our homelands and to reconnect our networks for knowledge exchange, community care, including all of our relatives. And we need strong allies to do this as well. Finally, for those who are disconnected from their own roots or are reconnecting to their ancestral roots, to the cultures that their peoples come from, that were at one time, or still are maybe, place-based, Mother Earth-centered, and right relationship. There's just really a lot to learn from Indigenous peoples who remain within these lifeways that are regenerative and sustainable. And so these are the things that have really inspired me to want to launch this podcast, kind of as a dialogue with the world, because the trajectory that humanity as a whole is on right now is just like way, way, way out of balance with the rest of Mother Earth, and is truly not sustainable, certainly not regenerative, and quite scary. For those of us who understand what's coming with climate change, who see what's happening with ecosystem collapse, we need to get in right relationship. We need to make a different choice. And so even though sometimes things seem pretty dire, these are challenging times, I do have hope, because I know from the history of my own people, from the Chahta and Chikashsha peoples, from the Southeastern peoples, those of us that descend from the Mississippi Mound Builders, we know that it's possible to walk away from empire, to make a different choice, and to reconnect the circle of life in a way that ensures mutual flourishing. So that's what I want to talk about in this podcast. That's what I want to be in dialogue with people around the world about, is how can we collectively make a different choice that is more nourishing and allows mutual flourishing.
Just a subtle little mic drop there. That's all. That's all I want to talk about in this podcast. No, it's so beautiful. No, it's so beautiful. And what you said about the mound builder civilizations walking away from empire. I literally got chills when you said that, because I remember Marcus Cloud talking about that, of like, like the mound builder society was amazing and impressive, but also was like teetering on that line of like hierarchy and the pyramid organization of society, and that creator dismantled that whole system with droughts and catastrophes that were the gift to the people to help them be more humble and stop being on top of their mounds, so to speak, and like be closer to the earth. And like that the people walked away from that way of life, just like my ancestors in Chaco Canyon. We were upended by drought. We had 5-story buildings. We had people come there from all across Turtle Island in the year 900 AD. We were carrying hundreds of thousands of logs from the Chusca mountain range to build this city from 100 miles away from the forest. And it wasn't the high priests who were carrying all those logs. You know what I'm saying? Like, we had slavery, we had caste systems, and the creator sent us a drought to give us the courage to change our way of life. And in 1100 AD, the whole thing collapsed. But like, people are like, where did the Chaco people go? And I'm like, I'm right here. I am a descendant of them. We didn't go anywhere. We just learned a better way. Our system died, but we didn't die. And I think that's what humanity is experiencing now on a global scale, is like a wholesale collapse. And we are not going to die. Granted, I gotta be honest, there are certain species that are going extinct, and that's not to be belittled or, trivialized in any way. But I'm just saying, like, we've been through this, and we know that there is a little window to get to the other side, and it is that window of humility and the window of being close to the earth. So I really love your raison d'etre of this podcast and what you're doing, and I'm happy to be a part of it. And with that, maybe we should wrap up. I'm really excited. I think we just did some kind of ceremonial magical thing of, recording one of our first podcasts, and I'm just really honored to be on this journey with you, sister.
Thank you, Lyla and Yakoki Hoki. Many thanks to all of you for tuning into this first episode of Mother Earth Medicine. We'll be releasing this episode on Earth Day, April 22nd, when we'll be participating in the 25th session of the United Nations Permanent Forum on Indigenous Issues. During the first week of the forum, April 20th to 24th, the Secretariat of the Permanent Forum and the Department of Global Communications will partner with Cultural Survival to organize and host the Indigenous Media Zone. This allows Indigenous media, journalists, and platforms an opportunity to report on the session through Indigenous worldviews, perspectives, and languages, and to organize media events around the theme of this year's session, which is ensuring Indigenous people's health, including in the context of conflict. Cultural Survival will be live streaming from the Indigenous Media Zone, and you can find that on our Facebook page. During the forum, Lyla and I will be talking to lots of Indigenous leaders and community representatives from around the world, so be sure to tune in to future episodes to hear about what we learn. Yakoki Hoki, Mechachipinta La Chiki. Thank you so much, and we'll see you soon.
Mother Earth Medicine is a podcast brought to you by Cultural Survival. Stream us on your favorite podcast platform and follow us on Instagram and Facebook under Cultural Survival.
We would like to thank the Cornell Ornithology Lab for allowing us to use recordings of the yellow-bellied sapsucker from their collection. This bird is known to the Chahta people as Biskinik, the little Chahta newsbird.
If you like our content, please share it with others. It's very important that the wisdom of Indigenous nations reaches as many communities as possible. And please consider joining us in solidarity by making a donation to Cultural Survival at cs.org/donate.